before, either as a participant or created one?
No, I've seen my students make one that they then used with other students, but I didn't participate in it. So I watched it only.
That's a really great use of it. I know Michelle Miller in her classes has students regularly create short Kahoots that she plays in class for the whole class. And it's a really good, it's a good type of practice for students. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and who knows what's under that? Oh, that was from the last session. Okay. I just want to show you a little bit about the options for it. We'll just do a quick one, or at least part of a quick one. And that's not the page I wanted to bring over. There are a number of options with Kahoot. For most people, the free version is all you would ever need. You can create as many questions as you want. You've got, you can have up to 100 people playing and participating. That works pretty much for all of our classes and so forth, unless you happen to teach the large class. So for the last few years, I've actually had the premium, actually now the premium plus, because it's the same price. And so that's my current plan. But the only difference for our purposes, most of the main differences is that the free version, you're limited to 100 simultaneous users. With a $3 a month version, which is still not that expensive, you can have 200, but you have to pay $6 or $6 to get either 500 or 2,000 participants at a time. And since I do sometimes have classes of, 300 to 400 or so, the larger group has often worked. And with some of the things I've been doing with Fact 2, we've had 300 or 400 people at some of the workshops where we haven't used Kahoot in it, but you never know, we might. So if you want to create an account, go to Kahoot, and you can sign in with your Gmail address. So you don't really need to do a lot of that. What I'm going to do first is we'll just do an example of a session. And I think I had, where did I put it? Is it right here? Yeah, this is one I put together actually for an earlier workshop. So I'm going to create a Kahoot, and you can play this if you have the Kahoot app on your phone. I'm not going to create a new one yet. We'll do that in a minute. Where is it? I didn't mean to do that. I'm tired. I'm sorry. So we are going to go to this one. It's a Neuromist one. It's it has multiple purposes. We're going to play this again, and we are going to, with Kahoots, you can either play them in real time, which is the teach option, or you can let people participate on their own time, which many people do, especially when people were in a high flex type environment. They would have, the grant session. I don't think that's today. I just saw a note from Sarah, sorry. You can assign it for asynchronous instruction, or you can assign it, I hope it's not today, is it?
3:30.
Oh, okay, good, okay. I was thinking there might've been another one at 3 o'clock, because I'd have to be in 2 sessions at once today, and that's been challenging. Okay, so we're just going to do this and choose the option to do synchronous play of this, but you can create them, and if students aren't there, you can let them do it on their own. And we're going to do a classic mode. You can have shared devices, and you can do it in groups if you have groups of students at tables, let's say, but let's do the classic one. And there's a couple things I like to suggest. One is you could let students do difficult things on their own later to try when they've had trouble with. One thing I strongly suggest, especially if you have freshmen, is to use the friendly nickname generator, because if you let students choose their own names, especially in a group of 300 or 400 freshmen right out of high school, you'll get some things that are going to be somewhat questionable and potentially offensive. So let the system determine. If they don't like it, they can click on the next one, but it's not going to be, it's going to be an adjective and a noun that may be amusing, but it's not going to be offensive. Don't let students, especially younger students, choose their own names. Now, you can let students see them on their own devices. And in fact, I generally do leave that on. I don't know why. You can randomize the order of questions, and we'll do that. We'll leave it as it is. We don't need to do two-factor authentication or move through any of that. We're just going to start with the classic option with that default. Again, the most important thing there is not to let students choose their names, because it's likely it's going to be offensive. Now, you're going to you can go directly either to the Kahoot app and use this game pin, or you can go to Kahoot. Is it IT? I hear some people who have Kahoot, or is that my playing? If you just do a search for Play Kahoot, let me see. I believe it's Kahoot.it instead of, let me get the URL. Is it Kahoot.it?
Yep.
Okay. So if you just do that in a web browser, it will pop up the game. And I'll put that in chat now anyway. And there we go. And then you just enter the game pin. Yeah, I meant to put in chat instead. I opened it. I did put it. Okay. There it is. Sorry. So, so now I see people have joined. We have a number of people here. We have Quick Stork, Smiling Koala, Gentle Goose, Zany Hen, and so forth. And if you don't like the name, you can toggle through it, but and this is anonymous, but it gives students retrieval practice. It lets them make mistakes without any real cost other than they don't get points quite as quickly. I mean, I'd be concerned about accessibility because students are graded according to, or they get points tied to how quickly they respond. And so if students do have learning disabilities where they normally get extra time, this could be a barrier, but on the other hand, it doesn't count. And if you let students play it on their own pace later, or you share the URL so they could play at their own pace instead of doing it with the class, but most students prefer doing it with the class. They enjoy that little gamification, especially because it doesn't count. So once everyone's in, and you can see the number of people, we've got 13 people who've joined. I'm going to click start. And the first question will come up. These are, I think, mostly multiple. I think they're all multiple choice. It was taken from, well, I'll stop. Okay, and 2 people, and we had 13 people, but only 2 people actually voted. It's all anonymous, it doesn't matter. But everyone got it correct. Okay. And so normally what would happen is then you could talk about
there's only 2 of us here. You got 100%.
Oh, how did we have the 13 names?
The others were ghosts. Didn't it show little like ghost icons beside them? I don't think those were real people.
Oh, everyone answered. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
now I was hoping
Yeah,
I didn't even look at the list. So, so normally you then would talk about it. You'd ask students why they picked certain answers or why they chose that, or, and you can address their misperceptions. It's a really quick way of doing some polling and checking on things. You can do it at the start of the class after they do a reading. You could do it at the end. You could do it at the end of a module. You could let students create it and challenge each other and so forth. And it's kind of fun. And the quicker answer came in from Dazzled Raven. I'm not going to ask who that is, but oh, we have all the answers. So it should have stopped. I guess it still thinks there's other people out there. I don't know why. Okay. And everyone got this correct. Okay, you guys are doing really well. But when we click next, it'll say who got the fastest thing. And Dazzled Raven is in the lead. Okay, but I'll stop it at this point. But basically, it's just kind of fun. People like to do better. They'll get really excited when their name floats to the top. They'll get a bit disappointed, but it's a nice, fun, no stakes activity that students tend to enjoy, and it provides retrieval practice, and the gamification encourages the development of automaticity, and it's not bad, especially for things where you want students to learn basic concepts. And you can adjust the time, the default time, so that if you have more, well, we'll go over that, but you can create longer time periods for more challenging questions or things that will take more work, and so on. Let's actually go back to create a Kahoot. So, that would just go all the way through. And at the end, it would give people with a highest score as it runs through. So, and what I'd suggest is you do the same thing, log into kahoot.com and create an account. Just log in with your Gmail address would be the easiest. And we'll just create a new Kahoot. There's templates you get. I think you only get the templates when you pay for it. But this is the interface. It's really, really simple. So you start by adding a question, and you get a variety of types. The quiz is nothing more than a multiple choice. True or false is obviously true or false. The typed answer is one where you have a specific word you're looking for, or at least a very short term. And you have to put in all the possible answers that are correct. So you have to be careful in coming up with questions that have very precise definition. I've used it a lot if they have mathematical equations where they have to solve a problem, they come up with a numeric result, for example, so but tell them how many decimal places to use, for example. Or you could just put the answer out with multiple options, and any one of them you could label as correct. You could do a puzzle to put, it's basically just an ordering thing, to put things in a given order. And here are some other things you can use this for. It doesn't have to be a game with correct answers. You also can do polls. You can also do word clouds, where you have students, if you are asking students for their perceptions of a topic, you can then display the word cloud that's generated by that. You can make it open-ended to type a longer thing if you want students to write a paragraph about something. You also have now the ability to do brainstorming. It's sort of like an open-end, it's sort of like a Socrative quiz where students will provide responses, they'll discuss them, and then they can vote them up or down and so forth. And there's also built-in presentations. You could build your whole class in Kahoot. You can import slides. I think you may have to have a paid version to do that, but you can import slides from PowerPoint, or I think you can convert Google Slides over. But basically you could do a presentation and then have this type of thing as an embedded polling, and everything would play up right on the app. And you can insert photos, like if you want them to do a graph, exactly. And you can make it accessible by including alt text in here. This is accessible, and it does have all that built in. And certainly in economics, we use lots of graphs. You could do the same thing with equations. It doesn't have a math, doesn't have a LaTeX editor, but you could always generate a LaTeX equation or print it as a GIF or PNG or whatever file and embed that in it. So you can use it in pretty much any type of question, as long as there's a well-defined answer, or you can use it as a basis of a discussion. You can create test question banks that you draw from. I think that does require a paid account, but I was teaching a class in the summer at Duke 2 years ago, before the pandemic, and I'd give one of these at the end of each day's class, just as a fun end of class activity based on what they had worked on that day. And it was something they look forward to. So again, you can import slides and so forth. So let's just say we'll make a very simple example. You just type in the question up here. I take it back. There are at least some simple things for math. And is that LaTeX now? No, sorry. But it does have, well, it has at least, maybe it is a LaTeX editor. So there's at least some capabilities here of adding in integrals, logs, summations, product terms, limits, and so forth. So this is more than there was the last time I created one, because I haven't done this since I didn't use it this semester. I last used it in the fall, and I'm almost certain that was not there then. So you just type in a question. So let's just call this a sample question. And you just type in the responses. I'll just throw in some random things. And you have to have at least 2 responses, but you could put in more, which I'm not thinking through very carefully here, obviously. But you notice you get the same editor for those. So you could put in equations, you could put in symbols, you can use exponents or superscripts or subscripts and so forth. And then you just pick which one is the correct answer. And here SFSF is apparently correct. And that's pretty much all you have to do. You just say done. And that then becomes one of the items in here. Oh, I didn't give it a name. I didn't mean to do done. I'm sorry. So I actually ended the quiz. So what I didn't do is give it a name for the quiz. So let me go, and you would now add a new question. And you would add a new question here. So you would keep going through, you add all of your questions, and then at some point you would give it a name for the quiz. And I am going to call this I guess you can't do it while you're in the middle of adding a question. Is there a cancel option? Well, let me just put some random things in here. And you could have images for the options. It doesn't have to be text. So if, for example, you had different graphs, you could put 4 different graphs in there and they could click on whatever graph was the correct one. It's going to be a little bit difficult because students will typically play this on a mobile phone. So you have to make sure that the graphs are clear enough so that they'll be visible on, a 4 or 5 inch screen in some cases. And so let's say there's that question. And now if I want to, here we go. So now I'm just going to call this junk because this nothing of substance here. You can put a description in, you save it to your institution. I don't know if I want to save this here. I should put it somewhere else, maybe OCC or something. And then the visibility, I'm going to make this one unlisted. And then once you're done, you do have a choice of music. It's all kind of like 1980s 8-bit theme music, but students actually tend to like it, and you can play it to see what they like. Well, you're not hearing it because I don't have the sound shared, but you get to pick a choice of music here. And there's Christmas and Halloween, so you can theme it if you'd like, and you're done. And there you have a Kahoot. And again, for the answer options, you can have single select or multiple select. You can assign points to any given question. You can set the time limit. The default is generally 20 seconds, but if it's something really quick, you can make it 5. If it's something more complex, you could go up to as long as 2 minutes. There's nothing longer than that. So you don't want to make things too long. One of the limiting factors that I know I had a problem with when I first started using this is the questions have a very limited character length because they want it to work well on a mobile device. So there's a limit. I forgot how many characters it is. It might be like 40 or 60, maybe 80 on each response. It has to be small enough so that it will display in one of those boxes as one of the answers. And so I had to reword a lot of the things I wanted to say to get the length, both the question and the responses down to a size that will work on the screen. So compared to other polling tools, this is limited in that, but I think it's just, the design, the interaction is something that students really like.
Yeah, you have to write them like Twitter questions.
Very much, yeah.
I think I had to redo a whole quiz where every question was too long. I was like, Arr. But it was really easy.
And I did take some old questions and I had to rewrite pretty much all of them just for that reason. So it's
And honestly, embarrassingly, the questions were better when they were shorter. So
that generally is true because we want to put in all the nuance, and that tends to just confuse people who are new to the experience. So, make your questions precise and clear, and and they don't have a lot of time to answer them anyway. So, and
every student I've talked to knows how to play Kahoot. They all have played them in other contexts. Like the only person in the room who didn't know how to play was me. So at least there's no learning curve at all, and they love it. They love it.
I've been amazed at how much students enjoy it. When I was using it in my large class a few times, one day I didn't do it because there were some other things I had them doing instead of a short Kahoot at the end. And they got annoyed because they said, why aren't we doing the Kahoot? So it's not often you have students asking to do a quiz. But again, I think the no stakes aspect of it and the gamification makes it much more enjoyable. So that's all I've got really. And
is it at the point, John, where we can assume everyone has a smartphone with them in class, or?
Pretty much that I think something like 99% of students nationwide has them. And, I think we're probably around 98% here, but we've been very close to 100% of students having a mobile device for 4 or 5 years now, because they don't have to have a smartphone. You could play this in a browser tab. And I know in my classes, everyone had had a computer or smartphone with them.
And since it's no stakes, if you want to say just answer on your fingers.
That's true. As long as they're careful which fingers they hold up, but yeah. but yeah, Or if they can't do it then, you could always just share the URL. And whenever I did this in class, I shared the URL for anyone who couldn't attend so that they'd have that same opportunity to work through it on their own and see how they did with the questions. And I set it up with unlimited attempts so they can go back and review it anytime in the semester if they want. And many of them said that they did. So I didn't check the logs on that one, but I had them doing enough other things that I was checking how often they did it. So, well, I couldn't check to see because I didn't have, it was all anonymous. So this was a quick filler session because it's kind of a fun thing. And I know a lot of people have used it and have thought about using it.
Yeah.
And you can always just tell your students to do it. And all they have to do is create it, generate a URL, and you can share it with the class, just put it up on the screen.
And even if they write incredibly difficult, horrible questions, which at least is my experience with students, it's no stakes. So
Michelle Miller mentioned in one of our podcasts, or I think it was a podcast, it was certainly in a discussion we had with her, that she was using this regularly in her class and she was having students do it. And one day she got tied up in a meeting or a phone call and she couldn't be there. She was late for class and the class had already started and they were playing a Kahoot before she even arrived. And she was actually really impressed by that. They just took over and started doing this as a starting activity. So
I love it.
So that's all I got. Again, it's not very formal, but it's a really simple and easy interface, and it's something students really like.
Now, if I could just figure out a way to work it into our chairs meetings.
I do have that NeuroMiss quiz.